I stayed late every night to cover for my boss, but then he fired me and took credit for everything. At first, I thought it was just the usual grind of being the new guy. Fresh out of college, clutching a degree in marketing and a head full of ambition, I joined Bellevue & Co., a mid-sized corporate firm that ran on deadlines and desperation. My parents were proud, first one in the family with a white-collar job. I was proud too. Nervous, eager, ready to prove myself. That's when I met Mark Delaney, my direct supervisor. Mark was everything I wasn't. Slick, confident, always 5 minutes late but somehow untouchable. He wore $800 shoes and drove a car that cost more than my entire student loan. And I had one suit, two ties, and a bus pass. But I respected him. Hell, I even admired him. Everyone did. They called him the Rainmaker, because when he was around, money flowed. What I didn't know was, Rainmakers often steal the water someone else carries. The first few weeks, I kept my head down. I learned fast. I started staying late, not because anyone asked me to, but because I wanted to be better. My apartment was a showbox with peeling paint and a radiator that wheezed like it had asthma. The office was cleaner, warmer, safer. I'd stay till 9 p.m. organizing files, writing summaries, updating campaign sheets. That's when Mark started noticing me. One evening, I was sitting at my desk, redrafting a presentation he'd left half finished. He walked in, loosened his tie, and gave me this half smirk. "Still here?" he asked. "Just wanted to clean up a few things before tomorrow's meeting." He looked at the screen. "You restructured this?" "Yeah, I thought it might flow better if—" "This is good," he interrupted. "Really good." From that day on, things changed. He started giving me more responsibility, at first unofficially. "Can you just pull these numbers for me before morning? Or could you write the pitch deck draft? I'll polish it later." Little tasks that soon became big ones. He began emailing me at midnight, texting me slides to edit before dawn. I told myself it meant he trusted me. But it was always me doing the work, and him presenting it. I didn't complain. I wanted to climb. I thought, this is how the ladder works. If I made him look good, one day he'd take me with him. Recommend me. Promote me. I was the perfect employee, never late, never said no, never missed a deadline. One Friday, after finishing a full product launch plan he handed to me last minute, I dragged myself home at 1 a.m. exhausted. That Monday, during the executive meeting, he presented my plan like it was his masterpiece. Word for word. Slide for slide. He didn't mention my name. And when they applauded, the CEO even said, "Mark, this is brilliant." He just smiled and said, "Thank you." Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself I was being mentored. I believed that if I kept proving myself, my time would come. But the line between mentorship and manipulation blurred faster than I could recognize. Soon, it wasn't just long hours. He began blaming me for his missed deadlines. "Didn't Josh send you that?" He'd ask in meetings, throwing me under the bus when something wasn't done, even if he'd never told me. I started covering for his mistakes, fixing his sloppiness, editing his work while he went to drinks with clients and called it networking. But I was too afraid to say anything. Everyone loved Mark, and I was still on a probation contract. One night, I overheard him laughing on the phone as I left files on his desk. "Nah, the kid's a workhorse. He doesn't even know I'm using him." I froze. I stood there, just outside his office, invisible like always. Something cracked inside me, but I buried it. Maybe he didn't mean it like that. Maybe I misunderstood. I went home, sat in my silent apartment, and stared at the wall. But the pattern got worse. He started skipping client meetings and sending me in his place, but telling me to say you're just shadowing. I'd explain the product, answer their questions, charm them into contracts. And then Mark would close the deal and take a commission bonus. He called it teamwork. I called it hope. Pathetic. Loyal hope that if I just hung on, eventually someone would notice. Then came the next hour pitch. It was the biggest potential client the firm had seen in years. A multi-million-dollar deal. Mark came to me 2 weeks before the pitch, handed me a folder, and said, "Build something that'll blow their minds. And don't mess it up." I didn't sleep for days. I poured my soul into that presentation. I researched every inch of Nexora's brand, their market gaps, their consumer psychology. I designed the entire proposal, mock-up campaigns, digital projections, the ROI analysis. Everything. When I sent it to Mark, he replied in one line. "Perfect. Don't forget to print it in color." He didn't change a single word. The day of the pitch, I watched from behind the boardroom glass while he presented my work, told my stories, and answered my questions, rehearsed from a prep sheet I'd written for him. And Nexora signed the deal. The office buzzed like a festival that day. Balloons, champagne, even an email blast with Mark's photo and the subject line. "A visionary deal. Congratulations, Mark." My name wasn't mentioned. Not once. That night, I sat in the break room after everyone left, surrounded by empty plastic cups and cake crumbs. I stared at the blurry reflection in the vending machine glass and whispered to myself, "This isn't fair." But it wasn't until the next week that everything truly fell apart. It was a Thursday. Cloudy. I was called into HR. I thought maybe, finally, I was getting my promotion or a bonus. Recognition. But Mark was already sitting inside, arms folded, wearing that same polished grin. "Josh," said the HR rep, "we've been reviewing some concerns about your performance. Missed deadlines, poor attitude, lack of leadership readiness." My brain short-circuited. I stammered, I don't understand." Mark chimed in, soft and rehearsed. I tried mentoring him, but he just wasn't ready. I even covered for him when he dropped the ball on Nexora, but dropped the ball? He used my presentation to land the company's biggest deal, and now he was blaming me? I tried to speak, to defend myself, but the HR rep just nodded with sympathy. "I'm sorry, Josh. Your probation contract ends today. No warning. No second chance. No severance." They escorted me out with a cardboard box. And as I stepped out onto the street, the sky finally opened up, pouring rain that soaked me to the bone. Mark didn't even look up from his phone as I passed his office. That was the day something inside me shattered. But it was also the day something else started to burn. The rain didn't stop as I stood outside the office that had swallowed 2 years of my life. No one called. No one followed me out, not even to say goodbye. I took the train home, soaked, humiliated, gripping a half-empty cardboard box filled with pens, a coffee mug, and a notebook full of ideas that had never belonged to me, apparently. My phone buzzed once on the ride back. It was a message from a coworker I barely knew. "Sorry to hear, man. Office politics suck. Heard HR say you were hard to manage. Take care." Hard to manage? I'd worked myself into the ground for them. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling. Replay after replay of Mark's fake concern. His lies. His performance in HR. The betrayal wasn't just in the firing. It was in every "good work, buddy," he'd said while sharpening the knife behind my back. But I wasn't done. Something had shifted in me. It wasn't just anger. It was clarity. A voice inside me whispering, "He used you. And then erased you. And worse? He got away with it. Celebrated for it." That was when the idea started forming. I didn't know what I would do exactly, not yet. But I knew I couldn't let this slide. The next morning, I woke up early, force of habit. I sat with my coffee and opened my old laptop. My work email was locked out, of course, but I still had copies of some files I'd backed up. Drafts, presentations, campaign designs, and not just an Nexora project, all of them. Each file had my digital footprint, creation dates, metadata, my name in file properties. I still had email screenshots of messages Mark sent me at 2 a.m. with vague instructions. And I had the pitch documents with tracked edits showing all the parts I had written. The more I dug, the angrier I got. Because not only had he taken credit, he'd rewritten history. On LinkedIn, I found that he'd already updated his profile, led and executed the full Nexera strategy, achieving a $2.8 million contract. Personally handled campaign research, structure, and presentation. Personally, I clenched my jaw. This man was rewriting my work as his legacy. I needed more. I needed proof, undeniable, indisputable, something that would expose him for exactly what he was. So I messaged a former coworker, Amy, the only one who'd ever been even slightly decent to me. She'd recently transferred to another department. Hey Amy, hope you're well. Just wondering, do you know who handled the Nexara campaign materials? Mark told HR I messed it up. Just trying to understand what happened. She replied in minutes. Wait, what? You did the entire thing. Everyone knew that. Mark literally handed it to you. He was never even in half the prep meetings. He said you were his engine. My stomach twisted. Why'd he say you messed it up? Also, off the record, people heard him say you were unstable, that you couldn't handle pressure. Even told HR you screamed at him in a meeting. I felt sick. I'd never raised my voice once in that place. Mark had planted seeds, slandered me, set me up to look like a ticking time bomb so when the moment came, no one would question it. I was done hoping for justice. Now, I wanted to engineer it. Over the next 2 weeks, I built a case. Not legally, not yet, but something better, proof of pattern. Emails, project drafts, voice memos where Mark left rambling instructions like, hey buddy, just throw together a few creative ideas, you always make magic happen. I even found an old recorded Zoom call, a client pitch where Mark accidentally left his mic off during the first 20 minutes and I had to take over. My voice, my ideas, my slides. But he had added his name to the final contract. And just when I thought I had it all, I got a text. Unknown number. Hey, you don't know me, but I used to work under Mark too. Saw what happened to you. Same thing happened to me last year. Fired right after I handed over a major deal. Call me if you want to talk. It was a guy named Reggie. He used to be in marketing, 2 floors down. I vaguely remembered him, quiet, smart, gone before I even joined. We met at a diner. Reggie looked tired, like a man carrying an old wound. Mark's a pattern, he said. He finds someone ambitious, overworks them, steals their work, then gets rid of them before they can rise. I built the Argentech campaign. Same story. He sold it like it was his masterpiece. Did you ever say anything? I asked. He chuckled darkly. To who? HR? They're in his pocket. I tried. Got labeled unstable too. Sound familiar? I nodded. He leaned closer. But I saved all my files. You did too, right? Every single one. He smiled. Then maybe. It's time someone taught him a lesson. We spent the next week stitching together a shared digital folder. Timestamps, voice clips, client confirmations, Slack messages, anything that showed how Mark had used and dumped his subordinates. We even had emails where he contradicted himself. In one, he told a client, my associate Josh will lead this strategy. In another, he told HR I was never involved. The contradiction alone was damning. We called the folder the real rainmaker. Now came the hard part. How to expose him. I didn't want to go to HR again. They were useless. I needed something public. Big, irreversible. That's when Reggie had the idea. What if we sent the file to Nexara? The client? He nodded. They just signed a multi-million-dollar contract based on a presentation you made. Don't you think they'd want to know the man who pitched it didn't even write it? I hesitated. That was dangerous. I could be sued, blacklisted, but at the same time, it was the only way. I didn't want to destroy the company, just the man who used people like rungs on a ladder. So we packaged the evidence, added a brief but sharp message. The Nexera strategy you signed was presented by Mark Delaney, but created entirely by an employee he later fired me. This folder contains verifiable proof. I do not seek compensation. I only ask that you know the truth behind the man you trusted. We sent it anonymously through a secure email address. Then we waited. 3 days later, everything changed. At 6:48 a.m., my phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking. Bellevue & Co. terminates senior executive after ethics review. The article was short, but powerful. Internal review launched after client concern reveals inconsistencies in credit attribution for major contracts. Executive Mark Delaney has been let go effective immediately. I stared at the screen in silence. Reread it 3 times. Let go. Gone. Mark Delaney, the rainmaker, was finally out in the storm. That night, I got another email. From Nexora's head of strategy. We appreciate your integrity. Your work was not only strong, it was visionary. If you're open to it, we'd love to have a conversation. I dropped the phone. I had no job, no title, but finally, someone saw me. When that email from Nexora came through, I didn't move for a full minute. It felt surreal. After everything I'd been through, the nights I spent silently screaming into my pillow, the days of walking past Mark's smug face as he stole credit for my sweat, someone finally saw me. Not just as a cog or a workhorse, but as the mind behind it all. I replied with shaky fingers. Thank you. I would be honored to speak with you. They set up a virtual meeting the next day. No red tape, no HR forms, no waiting list. Just a Zoom call with their head of strategy and their VP of marketing. Both had reviewed my work. Both had seen the evidence. And both looked at me like I was someone they respected. The VP, a woman named Lauren, leaned forward toward her webcam. Josh, we were blown away. Not just by the material, but by the fact that you never once asked for money or a job. That speaks volumes. I swallowed. I just wanted the truth out. Lauren smiled. We value people who care about the truth. And we don't believe in letting talent slip through the cracks. 2 weeks later, I signed a contract with Nexora, not as an intern, not as an assistant, but as a strategy consultant. Remote. Full salary. Respect. The day the onboarding email arrived, I printed it out and pinned it to my wall. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about recognition. But the world never lets you climb without shaking the ladder. Mark's fall hit the corporate world like a lightning strike. He'd been the guy for so long that people couldn't believe it at first. Some called it a hit job. Others whispered about internal sabotage. But slowly, the truth came out. And not just from me. Former employees, interns, junior staff, people I'd never even met, began to speak up. They shared screenshots, recordings, stories eerily similar to mine. There was even a Reddit thread titled, Exposing the Real Mark Delaney, Bellevue's Master Manipulator. It went viral. Within a month, Mark's LinkedIn profile was deleted. Within 2, his reputation in the industry was radioactive. But then something I didn't expect happened. He reached out. It was 10:42 p.m. on a Sunday night. My phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Voicemail. I hit play. Josh. It's Mark. Look, I know you think you did the right thing, but you don't understand the consequences of what you started. You think you won? Fine. But just remember, this world has a short memory. Mine's long. Real long. I stared at the wall. No apology. No admission. Just veiled threats and ego. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared. I felt pity. Because Mark wasn't angry that he lost his job. He was angry that someone he'd stepped on rose higher than him. Working at Nexora was everything Bellevue never was. Respect. Autonomy. Value. My first month, they flew me to their New York office to meet the team. I walked through those glass doors, not as a name on a probation list, but as someone they introduced as the guy who saved our launch. And I was. I led my first campaign pitch with them. This time, my voice, my face, my name. And when it succeeded, the CEO shook my hand and said, That was brilliant, Josh. I didn't cry, but I came close. And yet, somewhere in the back of my mind, I kept hearing Mark's voicemail. This world has a short memory. I didn't believe him. Not fully. But I couldn't ignore what came next. It started with little things. Someone from HR at Bellevue suddenly connected with me on LinkedIn. Then another. Then a recruiter messaged me, asking vague questions about workplace behavior and whether I had conflicts with previous managers. I ignored them. Then my email was flooded with spam. Dozens of fake job applications signed under my name. My inbox crashed. My Nexora email, thankfully, was secure. But my personal accounts were under attack. Reggie, my old coworker and now close friend, texted me. Dude, you pissed someone off. I knew who. But I didn't have proof. Then came the bombshell. Lauren, my VP at Nexora, called me into a private Zoom. Her face was serious. Josh, we received a letter. A letter? Anonymous. Claims you falsified the Nexora strategy and took credit for your boss's work. My heart dropped. What? Don't worry, she added quickly. We don't believe it. We traced the document's origin, a fake IP in a public cafe. Sloppy job. But you should know. Someone's trying to tear you down. I swallowed hard. It's him. She nodded. We thought so. But we've got your back. I hung up, heart pounding. He wasn't done. Mark wasn't just out for revenge. He was playing the long game. Trying to poison my name in the shadows the same way he once praised it in public. But what he didn't realize was, I wasn't the same scared intern anymore. I was ready for him. I set up alerts. I cleaned my digital footprint. I spoke to a lawyer. Not to sue, not yet, but to prepare. And then, I made a decision. One night, I sat down and wrote a blog post. A full, detailed, unfiltered story from day one at Bellevue to the anonymous sabotage. I included files. Redacted names were needed. But I made sure one thing was clear. This is not just about me. This is about the thousands of young professionals who give their blood to corporations, only to be erased when they outshine the ones above them. If you're reading this and it feels familiar, you're not alone, and you deserve better. I posted it anonymously at first. But 2 days later, I signed my name at the bottom. It exploded. Comments poured in from across the world, people in finance, law, design, tech, all sharing similar stories. #CreedWhereDo began trending. Podcasts called me. Magazines wanted interviews. Even universities reached out to ask if I'd guest lecture on workplace ethics. Mark had tried to bury me. Instead, he built my platform. A month later, I received one final message. Blocked number. No name. Just a text. You don't know the people I know. You think this is over. It's not. I smiled. Because for the first time, I believed him. It wasn't over. But I didn't need it to be. Because now I had the power. Revenge is never loud, not the kind that lasts. Real revenge is meticulous, silent, permanent. Mark thought the worst I could do was expose him. He thought I'd move on, burn out, disappear into another job. He had no idea I was just getting started. By now, my blog post had become something bigger. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a movement. #CreedWhereDo turned into a forum. A safe space for workers from every industry to share stories, tips, and more importantly, names. Dozens of messages came in every day. And Mark's name? It kept showing up. Different companies. Different years. Same story. I started organizing them. Documenting the pattern. I had timelines, screenshots, testimonies. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was assembling a professional record. And then I had an idea. I reached out to someone from my college days, Serena. She'd always been the bold one. Now she was a rising producer at a popular investigative podcast that tackled corporate corruption. When I told her everything, she didn't blink. You're sitting on dynamite, she said. I want you on season 4. I hesitated. You want me to go on record? You don't have to show your face. But your voice? Your story? This could change things. And if he's still trying to ruin you from the shadows, maybe it's time the spotlight found him. We recorded over 3 sessions. I gave them documents, emails, even recordings of Mark's voice where he contradicted himself or gave subtle threats. They titled the episode, "The Boss Who Burned His Bridges, with His Employees Still Standing on Them." It dropped on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, it had 400,000 downloads. By Friday, Bellevue's new executive board issued a public statement. We condemned the culture previously allowed to thrive under certain leadership. The behavior described is not reflective of who we are now, and we have begun a formal investigation into all legacy accounts associated with the named individual. Translation: Mark was officially blacklisted. But it didn't end there. A week later, a contact from Serena's network, an editor at a major business magazine, reached out. They were working on a profile titled, "From Stepping Stone to Storm: How One Employee Flipped the Corporate Pyramid." I agreed, with one condition. I wanted the piece to end not with my success, but with a list of resources for whistleblowers, interns, and young professionals being exploited across industries. I wasn't doing this just for vengeance anymore. I wanted protection for others. The piece launched to massive attention. And that's when companies, real ones, started calling me not just for jobs, but for consulting, to fix their cultures, to audit toxic systems. Mark had tried to erase my name. Now it was everywhere. But something still burned in me. Because while the public had turned on him, Mark hadn't suffered the way I had. He still had his savings, his house, his network. People were forgetting, as they always do. So I went one step further. I found out he was trying to start a consulting firm of his own, a small LLC registered quietly in another state, using only his middle name. Typical move. Hide the past. Rebrand. But he'd made a mistake. He used an old colleague as his fake co-founder. Someone who had also worked under him. Someone I'd already spoken to for the podcast. Her name was Dana. And she'd had enough too. I called her. "Dana, I know he asked you to help him launch this new firm. But do you know how many NDAs he broke when he used your name in that registration file?" She went quiet. "He told me it was just placeholder paperwork." "Can I show you something?" I sent her the folder. Everything. The old messages. The patterns. The Reddit thread. The podcast episode. Her own quote, anonymized, of course. When she called back, her voice shook. "I'm in. Whatever you need." With Dana's help, we did the final thing Mark never saw coming. We exposed his new company before it even launched. Dana issued a formal statement saying her name was used without consent. I anonymously leaked the LLC paperwork, showing how Mark was trying to re-enter the corporate world through a shell business. The post caught fire. Industry watchdogs picked it up. Clients he was courting backed out before their first meetings. A formal business complaint was filed for misrepresentation of partners. And just like that, his second life ended before it started. I wish I could say I felt joy. But what I felt was stillness. The kind of stillness you feel after years of noise. I didn't want more headlines. I didn't need more credit. I just wanted peace. And I finally got it. Nexora promoted me to lead strategist. They gave me my own team, my own budget. And when I hired my first 2 interns, I remembered every single hour I'd spent sitting alone in that old break room wondering if I mattered. So I made a promise. No one on my team would ever feel invisible. The first time one of them submitted a pitch, I made sure to reply, "Excellent work. And I'll make sure the board knows it came from you." The intern teared up. I understood why. Because in a world built on stolen credit, being seen is everything. But just when I thought my revenge was complete, life handed me something unexpected. One morning, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a short note. I lied. About everything. I thought if I could control the narrative, I could control the people. But you took the only thing that ever made me powerful. Silence. And there was no apology, no remorse, just resignation. Mark finally understood what I had built and what he had lost. I stared at the letter for a long time. Short, sloppy, no signature, just M. But I knew it was him. It felt like the final page of a story that had devoured 2 years of my life, a last breath from a man who used to feel untouchable. But something about it unsettled me. Because Mark wasn't the kind of man to write letters. He wasn't introspective. And he definitely wasn't the kind to admit defeat. I tucked it away, trying to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, he had changed. Or at the very least, accepted that his reign was over. I should have left it there. But my gut wouldn't let me. And as it turned out, Mark's letter wasn't a full stop. It was a comma. A few weeks passed. My work at Nexor kept me busy, leading my own team, pitching high-profile campaigns, even consulting with universities on ethical leadership. My life had finally found purpose. Then I got a call from Reggie. "You sitting down?" he asked, voice low. "Yeah, why?" "You remember Mark's old assistant, the one he fired before you came in? Melissa?" "Yeah. She reached out to me. She's not doing well. Says she has something she needs to get off her chest." I hesitated. "About what?" she said. "Everything you think you know about Mark's rise, his promotions, how he got into Bellevue in the first place, isn't what it looks like." That cold gut feeling returned. "Set it up," I said. We met in a coffee shop near the train station. Melissa looked older than I remembered. Her eyes were tired. Her hands shook when she sipped her tea. "I read the article," she said, avoiding my gaze. "The podcast too. You were right. About all of it." I nodded slowly. "But there's something you missed," she continued. "Something big." I leaned forward. "Go on." She took a deep breath. "Mark wasn't working alone." "What do you mean?" "I mean," she looked over her shoulder. "Mark's rise. It wasn't just manipulation. He had help. Someone inside HR. Someone on the board. Someone who wanted him in that position." I blinked. "Why would anyone want him there?" She pulled out a flash drive. "Because he was their shield. When employees complained, he took the fall. When interns were overworked, he became the face of the pressure, while the system behind him stayed clean." My heart sank. She went on. "They let him burn bright and fast, use up employees like fuel, and when he got too big, they'd cut him off and bring in the next rising star. You weren't the first, Josh. And you won't be the last." I took the drive. "What's on here?" "Everything. Emails. Call logs. A chain of promotions that go way above Mark's pay grade, all linked to a man named Simon Hale. Executive VP, quiet, behind the scenes. But he's been placing people like Mark for years." I swallowed hard. "And Nexora?" She shook her head. "They're clean. From what I can tell, they hired you for real. But Bellevue? It wasn't just Mark. He was the face of a machine." I spent the next 2 nights going through the files. Melissa wasn't exaggerating. There were internal memos with phrases like, "Delaney will handle the optics. We'll let Mark take the noise on this one. If Josh complains, we can use the performance review template again." There were even emails from Simon Hale discussing me by name, weeks before I was fired. They knew. They planned it. Mark wasn't just a manipulator. He was the puppet, not the puppeteer. And that changed everything. Because while Mark was ruined publicly, Simon Hale still had his empire. Still sat in a penthouse boardroom. Still made decisions that shaped careers and destroyed futures without ever stepping into the light. And no one knew his name. Yet. So I made a decision. I reached out to Serena, the podcast producer. "I have a follow-up," I said. "The story behind the story." She hesitated. "People are already fatigued. Think they've heard it all. They haven't. Trust me." I sent her the files. Her reply came within the hour. This is nuclear. We'll need legal. We'll need time. But yeah, let's light the match. The second episode aired 2 months later. It was titled, The Puppet Master in the Glass Tower. We blurred names to stay within legal bounds. But anyone in the industry with half a brain could connect the dots. Simon Hale was no longer invisible. The fallout was immediate. Multiple employees filed lawsuits against Bellevue. Investigations were opened. A whistleblower hotline was created overnight. And Simon? He vanished. His LinkedIn account was deleted. His name scrubbed from Bellevue's leadership page. A vague press release claimed he was retiring to spend time with family. But we knew the truth. The true architect had finally been dethroned. Months passed. I moved to a bigger apartment. Hired more people for my team. Started writing a book, not about revenge, but about power. How it's used. How it's abused. And how to take it back. And then one day, while going through old boxes, I found the letter again. Mark's final words. You took the only thing that made me powerful, silence. I realized, in the end, he was right. I hadn't won because I exposed him. I won because I spoke. Because I refused to stay quiet. Because I made sure the next intern, or assistant, or junior staffer wouldn't be devoured in the dark. That was my gift to the system that tried to crush me. Noise. Permanent, undeniable, unforgettable noise.